The one question we should be able to answer about education is, what are schools supposed to be good at? Surprisingly, there's not much agreement on this. Oh, people will talk to you all day about what schools are not good at. But if you're looking for consensus on what the main mission of schools is supposed to be, there isn't any. That's what I'm going to talk about tonight. Now, the fact that I have any sort of informed opinion at all on this is a little bit of a surprise to me. Firstly, because I never really expected to be a teacher. And secondly, because even though I've been teaching for a while, I don't think of myself as a good teacher. Now, I should explain. I think I can help kids learn. But what I mean is, if you close your eyes and think of a good teacher, you're probably not imagining someone like me. There's lots of things about schools that I just don't agree with. My favorite thing in the world is not a well-planned lesson. I'm not good at working with others. And I don't really like sharing. And so given all that, you can probably appreciate that at times it's been frustrating for me to be a teacher. But I've persevered. And I've persevered in part because I think I have a noble purpose. Before I became a teacher, I worked in secure custody with young offenders. And that work was exhilarating, challenging, sometimes frightening, but ultimately frustrating. Because we would work with a young person, we'd move them forward, we'd make their lives better, we'd help them get ahead. And then when their time with us was up, we'd return them right back to the very conditions that created the problem in the first place, and they'd often reoffend. And it became obvious to me that if I was ever going to make a difference in the life of youth at risk, I needed to be proactive. I needed to get to them before they got themselves in trouble. And teaching seemed to offer a pathway to that. So I went to Teachers College. And even though I've been teaching now for over 2 decades, that remains one of my main motivations for being a teacher, trying to help youth at risk. And it was one of my main motivations for being a teacher 13 years ago, when I started the school year with a grade 7 class. Now, the start of the school year for me is really only about 2 things. It's about helping students understand how our class runs and how it operates, how we're going to work together, and forming relationships. And this particular year, I was struggling to connect with one student. Fraser was physically small, not a great student, and he wanted nothing to do with having a relationship with me. Sometimes, the only thing he would do to acknowledge my presence would be when I would ask him to put his skateboard away in his locker, and he'd look at me and say, no. He spent most of his time in my class reading books about his favorite TV show, Dragon Ball Z. Drawing or talking to his friends. It looked like it was going to be a tough year. And then partway through the second week, we had a minor breakthrough. It was a beautiful fall day, sunny but not hot, leaves just starting to change. And we had phys ed at the end of the day, so I took the class outside and we played soccer. Amazingly, Fraser participated. Not strictly true. He threw himself into the game with unbridled enthusiasm. He was wearing pants that were maybe 3 sizes too big. And he would take 5 steps and his pants would start to fall down, so he'd stop and pull them up and then run again. It looked hilarious. By the end of the game, he had given up completely and was just running around holding his pants up. But when the bell rang and he walked off the field, his face was red with effort, he was sweaty, but he had a big smile on it. And he walked past me, and he picked up his skateboard in his bag, and then he stopped, and he turned, and for the first time he waved to me. And I thought, nice. And as he walked away, sort of silhouetted against the sun, I thought, I think we have a little something there, a little connection. I think we can work with that. But it was a busy day, a lot to do, so I grabbed my stuff and I went inside and I started getting ready for the next day. The following morning, I was driving to school, and I went past a house that had yellow tape around it, and 2 police cars waiting out front. And I wondered why. And when I got to school, I was surprised to find the front doors unlocked, and the principal waiting inside for me. He ushered me into his office, closed the door, and started to cry. And when he stopped, he told me that Fraser had killed himself. Now, it's a cliche that during times of crisis, things move like they're in slow motion, but that's exactly how I remember the next 2 weeks. I remember class meetings where the grief counselors talked to students just too numb with grief to listen. I remember taking boys down to the gym who punched blue mats and screamed out why until their hands were sore and red. And I remember the staff meeting where the police came and they told us what they knew about Fraser's death, which was almost nothing. And half of our staff broke down crying. There was a memorial service where I got up and spoke about a boy I had known for 6 days and tried to say something that would comfort a grieving family. There was a memorial stone out in front of the school that we dedicated to Fraser, and there was an open casket funeral with lots and lots of crying students. I'd given Fraser the locker right outside our classroom because I thought that would be easier for him, because I'd have to keep reminding him to put his skateboard away, and it would be a shorter journey. Now, the locker loomed at us. Every time we walked in and out of the classroom, there it was, reminding us of what had happened. His things were still inside it. His lunch bag, his drawings, his Dragon Ball Z books, his pencils. I didn't know what to do with them. It felt disrespectful to move them. And then students started to decorate the front of the locker. They put streamers, they wrote notes. It made it impossible not to notice. And then I came into school one day, and it was all gone. Someone had emptied the locker. And right away, I missed it. As with all tragedy, life goes on. And that's what happened to us. Slowly but surely, life went on. People went back to what they were doing normally. Except for me. I couldn't let it go. Weeks, months, even years later, I'd find myself thinking about it and asking myself, did I do enough when he was with me? Could I have done something that would have made a difference? When he walked away from me on the night he died, did he know that he mattered? Now I know that's irrational, and I knew that then. As a teacher, I can have a significant influence on the life of a student. But compared to the life outside my classroom, my powers are pretty limited. Students spend less than 20% of their time in class. And so while society would like us to believe that schools are powerful and can fix anything, like drug addiction or smoking or sexual health or obesity or coding or math scores, our ability to change things is actually pretty limited. We can't do everything. And this is especially true for a student at risk. Because no matter what we do for that student, No matter how much we tell them that we care, how much we feed them, give them school supplies, show them the right way to do things, and say to them, hey, you know what? Hang in there, kid. Because soon things are going to get better. And you're going to make a difference in your life and the life of every other person around you. No matter how much we do that, at the end of the day, they walk out of our classroom and back into the world that put them at risk in the first place. For some kids, the world is a cruel place, and there's not much we can do to change that. But that was my rational mind. And no matter how hard I tried to stay rational, doubts would creep in. Here was one of those kids that had led me to teaching in the first place. One of those kids I had pledged to help. A kid battered by forces too powerful for him to handle. A kid who needed a life raft, or maybe a life preserver with a rope and someone to pull him to shore. I missed one. A few years later, I decided to write about what had happened, try to make some sense out of it. And when I shared my writing, an incredible thing happened. The students who'd sat in my classroom crying, the ones who'd gone to the gym and punched the blue mats, read what I wrote. And they wrote back to me. And they told me something I'd never even considered. They told me I was wrong. They told me the story of Fraser wasn't the story of the kid I missed. They said it was a story of the 26 13-year-olds that I had helped negotiate through tragedy. They talked about how I'd stood with them and how I'd supported them. Leslie wrote, "Your stability through that rocky September was profound for all of us students. Thank you for teaching, but more importantly, your caring." I'd never thought of that. So what did I learn from all this? What did Fraser's death teach me? The most important thing I can do as a teacher are the relationships I form with my students and the relationships I help them form with others. When my students come to me in the morning, I don't know where they're coming from and I don't know what they're carrying. And when they leave at the end of the day, I don't know what they're walking into. So each morning I stand outside my classroom and I greet them. I look them in the eye, I smile at them, I say their names, every one of them, and I welcome them. And throughout the day I try to find time to be with them, and I listen to their stories, and I tell them my stories, and sometimes I try to make them laugh. And at the end of the day, when it's time for them to leave, I look them in the eyes again, I say their name, and I tell them to be careful. Now, I know this is not much. It's not going to fix anyone's math scores. But I think it matters a lot. In a busy classroom, it's easy to miss one. And I don't want to take a chance. I want them to know that I see them and that they matter. The thing we need schools to be good at most of all is helping our students to be more fully human. Helping them to work together, to learn how to laugh together, how to ask for and receive help, how to give help to someone, how to stand up for someone who needs someone to do that, how to stand together in crisis. And we need our schools to do this most of all, because if our students don't understand the importance of being connected with each other, then none of the hundreds of other things we try to teach them are going to make much difference in their lives at all. Thank you.